Hello and welcome to Overtime Hockey Talk. My name is Mark Paul. My co-host Justin Baker is here in studio, and let's just break it down. Taylor Hall has been traded to the Arizona freaking Coyotes. Maybe the biggest trade the Coyotes have made in since Phil Kessel.
Yeah, or since picking up Pavel Datsyuk.
God. Or Chris Pronger, who knows?
Yeah, there you go.
Any number of those trades right up there on the list of great Arizona trades. But fortunately, this trade, the Coyotes actually get Taylor Hall, and he will play for them. And Phil Kessel, obviously, too. But I do think that maybe Taylor Hall is the most talented player to ever play for the Devils.
You could make that argument.
I mean, has an MVP ever played for the Arizona Coyotes? I don't think they have.
I don't think so either. No.
MVP Taylor Hall on the Arizona Coyotes, and it's, after everything that we heard in terms of the what they were looking for, we knew the Florida Panthers were in on it, and
I heard Colorado, St. Louis.
Yep. There was a lot of teams that were, of course, interested. Which, if you have a little cap space, you're an idiot for not being interested. Let's break this down. So, the Arizona Coyotes acquire Taylor Hall, also Blake Spears from the New Jersey Devils, along with only half of Taylor Hall's salary. The Devils retain the other $3 million, and the Devils in return receive Nick Merkley, 22-year-old center playing in the American Hockey League, Nathan Schnarr, a defenseman who is going to play for Team Canada in the World Juniors, and Kevin Ball, along with a first-round pick that is conditional on... What is it conditional on again?
Yep. So the first-round pick, they're getting 2020 first-round pick, but it is lottery protected. So if for some reason the bottom falls out in Arizona and they win the lottery, Arizona can be like, hey, we're keeping this because this upcoming draft is pretty freaking good. So then it defers to next year. But the third-round pick is conditional on the point that if the Coyotes win a playoff round, now it doesn't say whether it's this year, next year, or whatever. If they win a playoff round...
Well, it would be... I assume it would be this year.
I would assume so, too.
Because it's the playoff round and him re-signing.
Well, yes, there is that condition. So if they win a playoff round or Taylor Hall re-signs in Arizona, it goes to a second. If they win a round and he re-signs, it goes to a first.
Yeah, so that to me says, well, he only has 1 year left on his contract, so it has to be a playoff round this year, which I guess the Devils are banking on the Coyotes winning a playoff round.
I think so, and it's possible because, I mean, if you really think about it, those bubble teams in the West, right, and the way Arizona's playing right now in that system with Rick Tocchet, it's possible.
Like, it's not Dave Tippett anymore.
I said that. So you never know. And because there's no, I mean, for me anyways, you look at the West and it's like there's no clear-cut team anymore outside of maybe, Colorado might scare some people and St. Louis still, but
I'd say Winnipeg's up there, even though, but I mean, on paper maybe they shouldn't, but they are they are doing it. So
they are doing it for sure.
And Arizona now has a goal scorer.
Right. Well, they hit Phil Kessel, but...
Yes, but Phil Kessel wasn't really doing... he's not having a great start to the season, start to his Arizona Coyotes career.
No, only 7 goals, 19 points through 35 games.
Yes.
So.
And that is... 7 goals in 35 games, that's low for Kessel.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I think the expectation would be that he has around 12 right now, 12 to 15. So I think bringing in Taylor Hall, that is probably... Who's going to benefit the most? Phil Kessel. He's probably the happiest man. I mean... Phil Kessel needs someone else. He's not the guy. He just isn't.
No.
And that's no knock on Phil. He's just not the guy. One other thing, Kevin Ball. The first thing that came to my mind is Kevin from the show Shameless, because his name is actually Kevin Ball in that show.
Oh, very nice.
But second round pick for the Coyotes in 2018. So definitely somebody to keep your eye on. Kind of considered like a B-level type prospect. He looks like he'll also play for Canada in the World Juniors. Like
yes, he will
be at camp. So
yeah.
So a decent haul, I guess. Like
no pun intended.
Yeah, true. Decent haul for all. Your thoughts, I guess, initially looking at this trade.
So my first thought was I'm ready to see the domino effect that this is going to have on the West, because right now I mean, outside of the fact that, yes, I think Arizona got themselves a very good deal, that they're finally making a splash, because when's the last time since maybe Keith Kachuk you could say that this team had some superstar power?
I
right?
mean, now looking at them with Kessel and Hall, that's a nice...
It's fantastic. The power play is going to benefit from that. And then again, now you get the option to put them together, or you have a nice 1-2 punch. But you look at the West now, and you look at teams like Edmonton, teams like Dallas, Calgary. Maybe even you can throw in some of the the other divisional teams like Winnipeg, or and you could say, hey, we need to stock up a little bit more, right? And my other big thought too, outside of the domino effect, was good on Arizona to get this done now versus towards the deadline.
Sure.
You got time to acclimate him, and you have time to basically say, hey, Phoenix is freaking awesome. Stay here. Don't go anywhere else. Like, I've been to Phoenix and Scottsdale and Glendale. Those are awesome areas to be to. There's plenty to do. Yeah, it's warm all year round. Yeah. And I mean, if you love hiking, if you love just warm weather in general, you're gonna freaking love it in Arizona.
My guess is that he's an active person.
I would say so too.
These guys are. It's. I don't know if he resigns there, but I like it. It's gutsy. They don't give up anything where I go, whoa, wow, that sure. Could any, I mean, obviously New Jersey's going, well, the chances of one of these guys working out is probably pretty high.
Sure. I think you got a 50-50 shot. Some of these guys will pan out.
Merkley, there's a chance you get him into your system, and maybe you think you obviously they see something in him. He can maybe come up, make the team next year, or he comes up at some point this year and becomes some sort of serviceable top 9 winger. But as far as the other two go, yeah, I mean, if you think you've got a defenseman, a top 4 defenseman, maybe in Schnarr, man, I think you're probably in good shape. But obviously, it's that first round pick. I'm surprised though. I am surprised because I think that I wonder what else was out there.
Yeah, that's you. I mean, at this point, you got to think that this was probably the best offer they were getting. And good on Arizona too, because I know they made it clear from the start, from everything that I heard, that Barrett Hayton and Victor Soderstrom, their top D and center prospect, were off the table. They weren't touching them. And I mean, why would you give up those? I mean, elite level prospects for a guy who could potentially just be a rental? So of course,
exactly.
And in Arizona,
but see, the other side of it is, okay, you dealt him in December. Sure, it's nice to kind of be done with this. I understand that aspect. Mm-hmm. There's the other side of it is, okay, yeah, this is what you got right now, because most teams are looking at the standings going, we can get back in this. I mean, San Jose is looking at it going, can we make up 6 points? Yeah, absolutely, you can make up 6 points. Just fired your coach, and we're going to talk a little bit about the coaches being fired as well, but San Jose isn't looking at the standings going, man, there's no way we could turn this around. Especially after what St. Louis did last year. St. Louis didn't make any big moves. I mean, yes, they had Jordan Binnington, and I don't know if there's a team in the league that has the accidental secret in their pocket that they're going to bring up, and he's going to all of a sudden be the next Jordan Binnington. But I think that there's a chance that has made other teams go look at this and say, well, we'd love to have Taylor Hall. But like Colorado, they were another team that was talked about being interested in them. They're probably looking at it going, I mean, we're secure in the Central. Obviously the Central's jam-packed, but they're happy. They're getting guys back now. Guys are getting healthy. Landeskog's getting healthy. Rantanen's healthy. And now they're going, well, we just got all our guys back. We're fine. Like, we're not going to give up a ton of future stuff. We don't want to lose the fact that, is this necessarily our year? Probably not. We need Makar to develop a little more. We need these guys to all probably next year. We're going to all look at Colorado and go, oh crap. They're going to be so like Bowen Byram.
Right.
He's coming up. That's another crazy thing. So Colorado has no need to make this move, because if Taylor Hall is, and my guess is that Taylor Hall wasn't willing to sign an extension anywhere.
Well, I don't think Colorado I don't really think Colorado wants to spend the money, because they know guys like McKinnon in a few years, and they got Rantanen's contract extension kicking in. So
so I mean, there was no point, but that's because we have so much time before the trade deadline. So teams right now, they're not in a panic. But what happens end of January if San Jose looks and they're like, okay, or maybe not even a team who's out of the playoffs, because maybe at that point you're just looking at it and going, we obviously overestimated on this season. We need to rethink things or retool a little bit. But maybe you're a team like Dallas, or maybe you're sitting on the just below some other teams, and you're going, if we could add Taylor Hall, we'll win the cup. Like, we're convinced of it. And the closer you get to playoff time, I think the more trigger finger a GM is going to have, especially a GM who maybe is on the hot seat to do something. Sure. Colorado, Sakic, not on the hot seat. He's fine. You're
Kevin Cheveldayoff, maybe.
You're looking at Winnipeg. I mean, you're looking at Dallas. Dallas, who had to fire their coach due to something. We don't know. He farted on the subway.
Wow.
Very unprofessional conduct. Imagine if Dallas or Calgary, if they added a Taylor Hall. And I think Taylor Hall would be willing to go back to that area. But if those teams come that time, they said, we have a legit chance at the cup, let's pull that trigger later on, they might be willing to give up more, because a GM, especially a GM who's on the edge, they don't care about 4 or 5 years down the road when that first round pick develops, because let's be honest, the first round pick, okay, let's say things end today. Arizona wins the Pacific. Even if they lose in the first round, that's still like a 20th overall pick. So that 20th overall pick, most likely that player isn't going to make an impact on your team for 3 to 4 years.
Okay.
So as a GM of a team who is on the cusp, you could care less about that player if you can pull in Taylor Hall. And I think that you may have been able to get some of those conditions taken off, 2 first-round picks for him. I would have taken 2 guaranteed first-round picks along with a B-level prospect over, like, Nick Merkley. From what I can tell, and Nick Merkley's kind of been that Merkley name just kind of gets tossed around.
The Merkley name?
Because I think he has brothers too.
Yes, he does.
I don't think that's a family I want anything to do with. They all seem to just kind of have a label on them. I just wonder what ends up happening with this trade. Now, could Ball and Schnarr and could all of them pan out and they get somebody awesome with the first round pick and they get another first or second round pick? Sure. That's possible. But I think that you are banking on a lot. Whereas I think at least you could have gotten an extra first round pick guaranteed, as opposed to a condition of a condition of a condition that's going to, like, a bunch of things have to come true in order for you to get more than that.
Right. Yeah. I understand it. But again, I think too, from the flip side too, New Jersey, right? I don't want to say better off in terms of like they're going to rise in the standings without him, but they're better off because now they're going to drop in the standings, quicker. And the quicker they do that, I think now you can fight off Detroit and LA for, one of these lottery picks when you have a chance at, Quentin Byfield or whomever, you want to take, and you're, number 1 or number 2, whether it's Lafreniere or whichever one of those 2 guys you want to fight over. But now you get a better shot at that. Whereas if Hall's in there putting up, points, maybe now you're sitting, at like 6th or 7th.
And of course,
pick.
you're risking him getting injured.
Of course,
and
yeah,
as well.
And then the value tanks, and then there's all that too. But
okay, so now after this trade, where do you think Arizona ultimately finishes in the Pacific?
I still think Vegas is number 1 in this division. I had them at the beginning of the year, and I still think, with guys like Pacioretty now getting on fire, and I think Stone will eventually put his game up another notch, and hopefully, Vegas is smart to go find a backup goaltender here soon.
There's a few teams looking for a backup goalie.
Yeah, there are a few teams.
I thought it was funny when people were saying that the Devils would be, they're definitely going to want a goaltender to come with us. I said, why would they want a goaltender? They want a tank. Yeah. You don't want a goalie.
Yeah, so I still think Vegas secures that top spot, but I think it's going to be a battle between Edmonton, Arizona, and Calgary for those number 2, 3, 4 spots. And I still think Arizona is a playoff team. There's no doubt in my mind. I think they're still going to make the playoffs.
Now they're definitely a playoff
team. Where they finish is another question, because a team like Edmonton now might look at this and be like, okay, we need to go out and acquire maybe another piece, another top 6 player if we can. A guy to give us options. Maybe you go out and you deal a guy like Nugent Hopkins and bring in a quality defenseman, or maybe you just bring in a winger to play with some of those guys. But again, they're a little limited on cap, but. Vegas, I think they're going to stay pat where they are in terms of, their forwards and D. And, Calgary's starting to turn it on a little bit more now, too. So it's going to be a battle. It's going to be real tight. But ultimately, I think they do make the playoffs, but they're in that bubble for that 2 to 4 spot.
Yeah, I actually think that this may be the turning point that they needed. And this is a John Chaika move. Like, this is his... he just went all in, I think.
Yeah, and think about this, too, right? So they just got a brand new owner. They're trying to negotiate a deal to... Well, I think they did negotiate a deal. I haven't been really keeping up on that. Yeah, for a new arena in Glendale. Yep. And, this is the type of superstar power face you need for a franchise to be like, we're here.
We're for real.
Yeah, so good on that.
Yeah, and I think that... you look at them. There's only 2 teams in the league with fewer goals scored against them. One of those being Dallas, and the other one being, of course, the New York Islanders, who they've only allowed 7 goals all year.
Still don't understand that.
They are, and in terms of just a straight plus minus, there's only 6 or 7 teams ahead of them in terms of a goal differential. So they're in a really good place. They haven't played well at home. They're only 8-8-1 at home. They're fantastic on the road. I want to say they have the best road record in the league, second best next to Washington. They're 11-4-3 on the road. So I think you want to play better at home, and the way you play better at home, you like. There's just something different about playing at home. I think it's a little harder to play the style that the Coyotes play when you're on your home ice, and that is. More of a, they have a great forecheck. They're fast, but they use that speed to dump the puck in, keep the puck deep, and essentially get this cycle going. But there's not a whole lot of offense. Even so, yes, they do have a great defense, but there's, they're at least at best middle of the road, kind of on that lower end of the middle of the road in terms of goal scoring. Taylor Hall. He's going to score probably for the rest of the year. There's 50 games left.
Yeah,
this season. For the rest, what's he going to do above a replacement player on that left wing? Probably score an extra 15 to 20 goals even over the next guy. And frankly, there's a difference of maybe 8 wins.
Right.
So him coming in is a huge boost. And assuming the Coyotes can stay healthy now, they've already had their injury bug bite them. I think Hjalmarsson, he's out for the year.
Right.
But I think they might win this division.
Yeah, the only knock on them when you look at the teams underneath them, like Edmonton and Vegas right now in the standings, is they don't have that elite center, right? And maybe the system is designed for them the way Tocchet has it, where they don't need that number one elite center.
One of the few coaches, I think, that actually goes, oh, hey, let's play to what we actually are, not what I want you to be.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's a crazy idea.
Freaking Mighty Ducks over here.
Who won that trade?
Oh, Arizona. Right. It's easy to say them right now just on paper. This is one where, maybe 4 or 5 years from now, you look at those prospects and what they've turned into, and then you can say, okay, well, yeah. Because you're assuming Arizona makes the playoffs, right? So now you're looking at a 15 to 20th overall pick probably for that first rounder for this year, and so that's a 3-4 year.
And if they win around, then I mean, the conditional pick is in 2021. So we don't, they might if they continue to be good, then that pick is
so you got 3 years to figure out what that player is actually going to be anyways.
Right, so. And you also there's so many moving parts. You can reacquire a third round or a second round pick somewhere else.
Yeah, or you flip that first round pick that you got from Arizona to somewhere else for a roster guy or who knows. But
right, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, now that we've beaten that trade to death, let's move on to some of the coaching firings.
So many.
Let's just roll right down the list here. We've already talked about Toronto. We actually recorded an episode like an hour before Babcock, or an hour after Babcock got fired. So we got lucky there. Just like with the Taylor Hall trade, happened like an hour ago, and we just so happen to be already planning to do an episode. So it works out for us. Let's start with the Calgary Flames and Bill Peters, because they have been on fire since letting go Bill Peters.
8-1-1 their last 10.
Well, and some of those were
Bill Peter
losses.
Again, they're rolling right now. Good on them for not letting this sort of. I mean, let's be honest. It's not like it was a sudden thing like Jim Montgomery, right? Was there for practice in the morning, showed up, and then all of a sudden game time, it's like, oh, guess what? Now you got a new head coach, right?
Right.
Figure it out.
Yeah.
No, but with this situation, it was, a few days. It was churning. You knew it was going to happen. I think at a certain point, you knew he wasn't getting out of this alive, but
yeah. It was 7-1 with their new head coach.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty freaking good. I think there's more, I don't want to say a relaxed feel, because Bill Peters, to me, from what I understand, he's kind of, he's a hard ass. I mean,
right.
He was one of those guys that, kind of like probably another coach. We're going to talk about a guy from that era of coaches from Detroit that, but
bunch of Babcock guys out there.
Pretty much. But it's nice to see his game's coming back around. Goudreau kind of looks like, he's getting back to his old self again, which is great. I
mean, the other side of it is like, you can't necessarily, not every guy is always going to be at the top of his game at all the times.
Right.
And Calgary last year, everyone in the regular season was like firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, they pretty
Mark
much.
Giordano had the best year of his career. Johnny Gaudreau, best year of his career. Sean Monahan had the best year of his career. So when you have your top guys all clicking at the same time, of course you're going to have a great year. And then the following year, when you have Giordano, who still looks good, but isn't quite going to put up 75 points
that's
again.
Tough.
And, Gaudreau has really struggled, and therefore Monahan's not going to look as good because, frankly, he's as Gaudreau goes, so goes Monahan. And but Calgary's still finding their way. I mean, they've allowed 9 more goals than they've scored, and they're still in a playoff spot.
Yeah, that's pretty freaking good. And I mean, you look at their goaltending, right? Dave Rittich, he actually looks like a decent number one. I wouldn't say he's officially cemented himself as this.
He's looking pretty good right now.
Yeah, but he's looking good.
He's rolling.
4 wins in his last 5 games, but still, he's been giving up 3-4, 3-2-1 goals in those games. Unfortunately, beat your Maple Leafs a couple games ago, but
that's true, they did. But there's also those. When a team travels out and you go, a lot of teams do the Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton, whatever order you do it in. And who actually comes out of that trip 3-0?
Oh, I know. I used to watch the Wings do that all the time, and I hated it because I knew they weren't coming out of that alive.
I think about how I feel when I travel to other time zones. Yeah, granted, like traveling to Europe is a little bit more of a shock when it's like 5 or 6 hour difference as opposed to 3. But still, you go out of your time zone, even when you go like 1 hour. You go to Chicago, like we're in Detroit, go to Chicago, and you're like, it feels like 10 right now, but it's 9. It's weird. And so you take those 3 hours, and then you have another time change moving back east, 1 more hour. Like, it's got to throw your body off. You're basically playing a game at 10 p.m.
Oh, I hated playing those 11 o'clock games in our hockey league, dude.
The worst.
Those were terrible.
And they're meaningless.
They really were.
And so for these guys, it's just, I got to imagine that it's hard on like mentally. And so you go out there and you do that trip, you're probably not going 3-0.
No, it's hard.
Fortunately, now when you do the California one, San Jose, LA, Anaheim, all 3 of them suck. So it's a little easier.
Oh boy.
But Calgary, I mean, good riddance to you, Bill Peters. You'll never he's
never coaching.
He's never coaching the NHL. It's not to say that like there can't be forgiveness for somebody if he comes out and he needs to do something to remedy what happened, because obviously it's freaking horrible, and like even though it was 10 years ago, and you can say all the things you want about like why doesn't somebody come out 10 years, like it did have a weird feeling that like Calgary's losing, and now all of a sudden somebody's coming out and saying this. Like I do have, like, who cares? Like you can have a suspicion of like, maybe somebody wanted him to get fired, and so they said, dude, just like now's the time to share this story. He'll be gone,
right?
But at the same time, you know, who's to say when somebody gets the courage to go out and talk about it? It doesn't matter to me. You said it. Sorry, bro. Like there's, you know, usually you hear stories like that and it's somebody saying, this guy said that one time, or like I heard them say it a couple times, and they're the only person who ever heard it. And you're like, I kind of want to believe you, but I don't want to. Like, I'm just not sure.
There's some doubt there.
I don't know what to do with this. But everyone came out and was like, yeah, he's a piece of trash. Right. Like, oh yeah, he kicked me in the back of the head. Oh, he punched another black guy, and like, are you kidding? Bye. Just go. So he's gone.
Yeah, piled on.
And there's really no like, oh, you know, you should have been given another. No, you don't get another chance. You could have another chance coaching like some garbage junior team in Germany, and you can like build yourself back up maybe, but you might want to go do something else. I don't know. Let's go to a less known story, because we have no idea what happened to Jim Montgomery in Dallas.
Yeah, that's an interesting
Jim Montgomery goes, and Rick Bowness becomes the head coach of the Dallas Stars, who it's been a minute since Rick Bowness coached, at least was the head coach. But yeah, Dallas. Do you think that move? See, where I think the Calgary Flames, that was a good thing. Even like I think Bill Peters might have just been fired anyways, and then it was like, oh, all right, we have a even better reason to fire him, so he's fired. Whereas Jim Montgomery, I think they had really turned things around.
Yeah, they started off the season, I think, like going
1-7 or something, like that, right?
Terrible record, and then they went on just this amazing hot streak, and they were currently in the midst of it. They were still playing well, and then just like I said, practice. You know, they're doing drills, and it's like, okay, cool, he's here. You know, they do the press junket with him, and then the game rolls around. It's like, oh wait, we forgot our guy in luggage or something,
right?
And he's canned. I mean, and again, we still don't really know what happened there, and
he has come out and said, I will talk about it at some point in the future, but not now.
Right. It was quoted as unprofessional conduct, inconsistent with the core values and beliefs of the Dallas Star and the National Hockey League. And I mean, coincidentally, they just had, you know, the board of governors meeting, and, you know, what's his face? Gary Bettman laid out all these, you know,
sure.
You know, here's what we're going to do. We're going to have a hotline for players to call and stuff. And really, Jim Montgomery's situation was unrelated to that whole thing.
Yeah.
It was just weird timing.
Yeah. Jim Nill found out about it like over the weekend. They did an investigation, and then on that day they said, all right, yep, we gotta do this, and it was substantiated. And but Jim Nill wasn't really willing to talk much about it. It sounds like, my guess is that, I mean,
they said personal behavior issue.
There's no way that Jim Montgomery isn't going to fight it, because they're going to try and say, well, your contract's void.
Right.
Where, of course, you're going to fight it. You're going to say, well, you can go ahead and fire me, but you're going to pay me what I'm owed. By the way, the last time Rick Bowness was a coach, the Phoenix Coyotes went 2-12, 3-3 in 2003-04. And that was the last time he was the head coach. He did return as the assistant coach for, do you know who the coach was that he came back as the assistant coach for?
I'm going to say Dave Tippett.
It was Wayne Gretzky.
That's right. Yeah. He only lasted a season and a half there, too.
Yeah. I think he just said, actually, I don't want to coach anymore.
Right. He was part owner, too.
Yeah, this was a bad idea.
Yeah. They weren't that great back then, so.
I think Dallas, probably for the most part, like, they just kind of are what they are. Do you see Dallas winning the cup?
No.
I don't. Do I see them missing the playoffs?
Nope.
Not really. Could they? Yeah.
They'll compete. They'll push some teams.
Kind of one of those teams. Like, it just, they're not that interesting to me. If you hear a dog barking in the background, that's my dog howling.
I love it.
They are just kind of 18. Like, they don't score a lot, but they play pretty good defense. They're pretty boring.
I don't want to say boring.
They're just not very interesting to me.
Yeah,
the most interesting thing that happened was their coach did something that we can't talk about they fired him, and they hired the most boring coaching hire of the last 20 years.
Because it's the safe coaching
Rick
hire.
Bowness.
It's the guy that you're probably not going to get in trouble hiring at all. And then, of course, they'll reevaluate after the season and do all that garbage. But
yes, he's a fantastic record as a coach. He's 123. Nice. 123
yeah, okay,
games
100
as a
wins.
coach.
Great.
He only lost 289 games, and he tied 51 of them.
You look at all the teams he coached, though, they were all horrible teams.
All such bad teams.
Yes.
He did make it to the conference finals in 1991-92, and they lost to the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Yeah,
the Boston Bruins.
like everybody else did.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of hard to say what Jim Montgomery's fate is going to be after all this comes out because we don't know what happened. If it's something that maybe he can, do some charity work for, I have no idea. I don't even want to speculate.
Maybe just disappear for like 3 years.
Yeah, just take the year off and just go.
Well, just come back during the presidential election and you should be okay.
Nobody.
You will quickly get drowned out. No one cares anymore. Let's continue to fall down the standings of the Western Conference.
Let's do it
and tumble into the San Jose Sharks, who are 3-6-1. They did win their last game, but they fired Pete DeBoer 16-17-2. They were really struggling to score goals, but they also cannot stop goals. That's been their biggest issue all year. The only team who has allowed more goals than the San Jose Sharks, do you know who they are?
Detroit?
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. Yep. Detroit has allowed 136 goals. San Jose had 122. So not doing so great. Obviously, you're looking at it from top to bottom and you're going like, something's not working. Martin Jones isn't this bad, is he? I just really don't think he's
I honestly think when you look at that defense, nobody is playing like they should be, right? I mean,
how many more years are we going to give Doug Wilson the chance to hire and fire a coach?
Well, when you consistently make the playoffs, how can you argue with the results, right? I mean, under Wilson, they've been to the Stanley Cup final. They've made the conference final a few times. I mean, there's a good record there.
Well, it could be worse.
Yeah, we could be like Ottawa right now. But I mean, okay. Peter DeBoer is actually the one coach we're probably going to talk about where I do think he might actually get rehired this season.
Apparently, there's a theologian named Douglas Wilson.
Oh, my goodness.
And he's a very bad person. So,
wow.
So GM of hockey of Sharks, we want to look him up.
Yeah, you got to Google that one.
Anyways.
Yeah, I don't think Martin Jones is that guy he once was when he was, very middle of the road, 9-14, very reliable goaltender. But I don't think he's this bad, though. I really don't. I think, Erik Karlsson hasn't been as good as he could be. I think recently, I should say just the month of November, we kind of thought that Vlasic-Karlsson pairing was finally starting to work out. And I thought Brent Burns, while still struggling a little bit, I thought, okay, he's starting to get some of his game back. But this team on the back end, I mean, Vlasic doesn't look anywhere near as good as he ever has been. And I think this is honestly probably the worst season I've ever seen him play hockey when you have a guy who, you've easily looked at for his whole entire career and say, this is probably one of the most underrated defensive players in the game.
Yeah.
And it's just not working. And much like Calgary, right? Like last year, they had all their guys playing their best seasons ever. I think now you're looking at a San Jose team where you're like, okay, on the back end and in goal, we're having guys that are playing their worst seasons ever all at the same time. And that sucks.
Yeah, kind of a mix of bad luck, but also there's a lot of players that are well over 30. They are definitely on the other side of their prime. I look at this team, obviously, like Doug Wilson has had a great career at taking the Sharks, making them very good. Like, he's the one who made that trade for Joe Thornton, a phenomenal trade it was. And he's the guy who's brought in everyone that you see currently. I mean, what a trade. Brent Burns bringing him in, I think, for a second round pick or something.
Right.
Like
Snatching him out of Minnesota.
He's brought in Danny Heatley. He's developed and done a phenomenal job building an organization, and it's not his fault. I would say that they haven't won the cup, but because they've always made the playoffs, they haven't won the cup, so therefore they haven't gotten great, really high picks very often, and maybe the times when they do get top 10 picks, they haven't really worked out. So maybe the reason why he doesn't care so much about the draft always is because he'd rather just sign people. But he's done a really good job at retooling over drafting. Is it finally maybe catching up with them? Like, they have a lot of players that, I mean, of course you can always move these guys, but I don't see, like, who is going to trade for Brent Burns? Another
at 34 years old,
5 years at $8 million after this year, and plus he's got a no trade clause. He can submit a 3-team trade list every year on July 1st.
3 teams.
3 teams,
and they're all probably going to be Stanley Cup contenders. That he's
and how are they ever going to, like? Are they going to fit him in half his salary?
Right.
Who's going to Mark-Edward Vlasic? Who's going to trade for his 7? Maybe Mark-Edward Vlasic's a possibility, but he also has a no move clause. Just period.
And he's got a lot of years left.
So does Carlson. So yeah, it's going to be, if they can't figure out, like, it's almost like you're not trading those guys, and so now you have to figure out, like, who can fit in other places. Like, obviously, the way that things were going, it's their top 2 centers in, like, a Logan Couture, a Thomas Hertl, and you've got Joe Thornton. It's just not good enough to compete with the other teams in the Pacific, which, frankly, yeah, when you look at who they're going up against, and center-wise, I guess they're in a good position, but they just don't really have the rest of the depth scoring that everybody seems to have, and maybe not the superstars at the top that everyone else in their division seems to have as well. And that's just going to probably leave you in the lurch. They do have a great defense, but
it's not playing good right now. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And if they don't get it together too, like you said, you're stuck with, between the 3 guys, Burns, Vlasic, and Carlson, you're stuck with, after this season, at least another 5 more years of this. And they
don't have their first round pick this year anyways.
No,
so.
they don't. And
it is not lottery protected either.
It's not. That's true.
Ottawa, remember, like, Ottawa?
Yeah, they lost.
Of course, they traded their. They had that year, and they were.
Colorado got Bowen Byram.
But this year they have San Jose's, and can you imagine if San Jose continues to fall? Because, in my opinion, like, Nashville, they've played 4 less games than San Jose. Like, in those 4 games, they're going to find 2 points. So they're ahead of San Jose. So that puts them 4th last in the West. And frankly, I think there's a chance that Anaheim could push them a little bit. They have 2 games in hand. Do they win one of those games? It's likely. So now you're looking, you're down there with Chicago and LA. And suddenly maybe that pick it's a top 8 pick.
Yeah, that's scary.
And that hurts. And that's huge for Ottawa. So San Jose losing, Ottawa is just, come on, baby.
To put it in perspective, too, this just cracked me up when I just did the numbers in my head really fast. When you look at San Jose's top 3 defensemen, the money they're spending on them is roughly $26 million, right? For $27 million on the flip side, you could get Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins.
Yeah, or you could get John Tavares, Mitch Marner, and Austin Matthews.
I mean,
a little more, but...
Unbelievable if they can't figure out this defense and this back end, and I do think, yes, they're going to need another goaltender.
The difference is that Nugent Hopkins, McDavid, and Draisaitl are, like, add all their ages up, and I want to say they're probably about 67,
right,
or like 69 or something like that. Whereas you add all these guys' ages up,
they're like 85, 90.
They are over 90 years old.
Okay,
so
that's even scarier.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because when you think of Erik Karlsson, you're like, he's got to be in his 30s, but he's only 29. But
he's still one guy maybe you could move if he gets his production going. But you're gonna, he's got that full no move, and you're gonna have to eat some of his salary down the road too.
I mean, this year is gonna have to be like maybe Joe Thornton is willing to, like, if he's looking to
go somewhere,
like, hey, would you want to, like, one more time? You want to go to somewhere and see what you can do, chance at a cup. Melker Karlsson is a UFA at the end of the year. They could flip him. They don't have a whole lot in terms of, like, guys they can really move. They could move Patrick Marleau.
Nah, he's not going to want to go anywhere.
he doesn't have a choice.
Well, that's true.
He doesn't have any kind of no move.
True.
So, but I think they would respect what he wants to do.
Sure. Because they're not going to get much for him. You might get a 5th round, 4th
maybe the
round
Leafs
pick.
trade for him. He'd probably go back to Toronto. If the Leafs trade it,
well, now that Babcock's gone,
be a 4th round pick for him and bring him back in, and he can play the 4th line.
Goodness.
We have another. Well, we already talked about Babcock. We've got that.
Yeah, we've talked about him. So we talked about DeBoers. We talked about Bill Peters. So who else? Jim Montgomery. There's one more guy.
We have John Hines.
John Hines.
In New Jersey, which, of course, we've talked about Taylor Hall.
We've talked about him.
But John Hines, this is kind of like John Hines gets fired and you trade Taylor Hall because now, obviously, you're just rolling up this team. Like, you're kind of, they made the playoffs, what was it, 3 years ago they made the playoffs now?
Oh, further than that, I think.
No, they made the playoffs a few years. Remember, they had the unexpected year.
Yeah.
And they did real well. Made the playoffs. They were first place in their division for a while. And that was Nico Heischer's first year.
Oh, right. That was Taylor Hall's only 5 games he's ever played in the playoffs.
It was like, oh my gosh, New Jersey's gonna, they've turned it around. They've built this new system, and ever since New Jersey's been, they've continued to be pretty bad. And you wonder if that season teased them into thinking they were better than they were. Like, does this team have to trade Taylor Hall now? Or sorry, PK Subban. PK Subban.
No, I don't think you're there yet. Mostly because
You just traded Taylor Hall.
Well, listen, PK Subban's value is at the lowest it's ever been right now. He is not having a good season at all, both statistically and just his on-ice performances, right? And so I don't think, maybe the one piece you could look at and you could say, hey, we can move and maybe get a decent return, maybe a Wayne Simmons, because you looked at what St. Louis did, right? And you need those grinders, you need those hard-nosed guys that can
Wayne Simmons, he'll fetch something.
Yeah, so you could maybe get a 3rd round, maybe a 2nd round pick for him, if you get a team desperate enough. Nikita Gusev, he hasn't really worked out. I don't know if maybe you try to move him, but again, they just signed him to a deal. No team really wants to take that on, same as, PK Subban's contract. So,
yeah, you've got Simmons. I think that probably Andy Green, Sammy Vatanen, they both have some value. But
yeah, Vatanen would be a good, because he's left-handed. I'm sorry.
I got to imagine though that they'd like to sign Vatanen to an extension at this point.
Between him and Will Butcher, that's basically their future on defense. If you really think about young guys they have that are can hold down the blue line.
Sure, he is 28 years old. He's not really that young.
Well, not young anymore, but. I mean, from a defensive perspective.
He was in that the trade that they made
from the Ducks.
Yes.
For Silverberg.
No, it wasn't Silverberg. It was
I'm sorry.
Wow, what's his name? I'm having one of those days.
One of those days.
I can't think of things. Adam Henrique.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. Yes,
I know. I listen to podcasts too, and when people are like, "Oh, what's the guy's name? I'll look it up." I'm like, "No, you idiot! It's this guy. How do you not know? It's Adam Henrique."
Yeah, sometimes you just go blank.
It's just how kind of middle of the road Adam Henrique is as a player.
Well, yeah, but
bad player.
No, not a bad player.
Just a fine player.
But New Jersey, I mean, listen, they're 4 points out of last place behind Detroit, although they do have 3 games in hand. So realistically,
Vatanen's the guy. If you could trade Vatanen and get something reasonable in return, I mean, I do think that Vatanen in the right situation, he's probably close to a 40-point guy.
Yeah, he could be a real nice second pairing guy.
I mean, and a top 4 defenseman bringing that in for the playoffs, that could be huge. So especially since it's clear, like New Jersey's willing, if you're willing to maybe cough up a nice, maybe somebody's willing to trade a first round pick for Vatanen, a top 4 defenseman to be able to bring them in. If you know that you're a Stanley Cup contender and you're willing to deal your first round pick, or maybe like a 2nd and a 3rd in another year for Vatanen.
Maybe a team like
probably
Edmonton.
Willing. Yeah. That's a great fit. Especially if you're willing, New Jersey probably willing to eat half of it. And so then you're looking at a $2.4 million hit.
Yeah, but prorated over a short period. So
nothing.
Easily fits in the Edmonton's cap situation.
Yeah.
And so, again, you find a right fit there. And I do think they'll get a good return out of him, and they'll get a decent return out of Simmons. And so maybe you start putting together some pieces, right? And they've got a couple first-round picks this year. Their first-round pick's going to be, towards the top of the draft, and they're going to probably get a really nice player out of this. And, again, Nico Hischier, Jack Hughes, these guys are still young. You got a lot more years ahead of you, if you're New Jersey. And I think, they got time to rebuild it with these guys. So, but again, like we talked about, PK Subban, he's a little up there in age in terms of not only just physical age, but then his contract. Right, he's got a few years left on that too. So we'll see what happens with him in New Jersey. I don't suspect he'll finish out that contract there, but you never know.
Yeah, Ray Shero has had kind of an interesting start in New Jersey.
Yeah,
it's if New Jersey can go and they can tank and they end up with a first overall pick, I think this time, whereas Nico Hischier was like, he's a nice player, but that was a pretty weak draft.
Right.
I think that you're going to have this next draft's going to be pretty nice.
Right.
For
even
anyone
if you get one or two, I mean, my goodness.
You get into the top 5. At least it's very top heavy. So you get in the top 5, you're going to get a good player. I think that's we'll just keep on going forward. Do you think there's any other coaches that could be fired here before? I don't think before Christmas. I think at this point,
no.
Probably pretty much everyone is set. I think the Blashill's fine through the end of the year. I think there's a chance that he does get let go at the end of the year. I just don't like. Yeah, I don't see any reason to fire him now, but I also don't see any reason to keep him on.
No, I think if you're Yzerman, right? I mean, every GM wants to bring in their guy, right? It's been shown, and I think Bruce Boudreau's kind of one of those guys right now that maybe Bill Guerin's looking at and saying, "Hey, granted, Minnesota's been on a nice little hot streak, but he might be starting to feel the heat a little bit because, like I said, every GM wants their guy in there. They're going to give him a year, see what he does, and I think with Detroit, and you look at Yzerman, let Blashill, coach it out for a while. And I think towards the end of the year, you might look at a guy like Mark Crawford and say, okay, well, we know we've got a previous head coach in there. Let's see what he can do. Maybe he can,
Well, if has everything been figured out with his situation?
Yeah, I have no idea.
He's been on organizational leave, so
right. Yeah.
But
again, you got maybe a guy in the system that you bring up. You say, let's see if maybe what he can do or yada yada. But I think when you look at coaches that potentially could be fired here over the next couple months, or maybe after Christmas. Yeah, he's the one guy I look at. Absolutely. Because, Nashville, there's a team when Duchesne came in, I look at, okay, now you've got a nice 1-2 punch with Duchesne, Johansson.
You've done everything that you can do.
Yeah, you've got a great defense back there. You move Subban because you got this young kid in here who can come up and play some minutes, and you've got nice young pieces. You've got a goaltender who's, towards the end of his career, but he's still a freaking good number one. And they're sitting at 33 points. They're almost 10 points out of a playoff spot at this point in that Central. And I think
I know that they have a lot of games in hand.
Sure.
But still, okay, let's say you win 3 of those. You're still you're still looking outside of the playoffs.
Right. And it's at that point where you're almost ready to hit your fingers on the button, but you haven't pressed it yet.
I think that it's change for the sake of change with Nashville. Like Peter Laviolette has been there for a minute. He's been there since 2000. Why is this all the way at the bottom? 2014. So, he's coming up on his 6th year with the team. That's a long time for a head coach in the National Hockey League.
It is, yeah.
And especially a head coach who, yes, they've been to the finals once. That's
about it.
Been in the finals once. They've been in the conference finals once, second round, something like that. Yeah,
I mean, you're looking at almost an identical situation with Peter DeBoer, right? A guy who took them to the finals, a guy who's been to the conference finals before.
Good coach. He'll go somewhere else and be a good coach, and maybe win not to say that he couldn't win a cup somewhere else. It's just you think the message is probably we just need a change because we need a different feel around here, and who knows? Hey, Nashville rattles off 5 in a row. And the games played as even. All of a sudden, they're in a playoff spot. They hit their stride, and we look like idiots for wanting to talk about firing Peter Laviolette because he ends up being a Coach of the Year nominee because he has this great second half of the year.
Right, and maybe, who knows? I look at Kyle Turris, too, as a big sticking point in that situation because he's been, sitting in the press box a lot. And so, at what point does a GM get upset that, you're trying to trade this guy, but you're putting him in the press box and you can't let the GM do his job because now you've just tanked this guy's value.
Well, and I think that.
Well, he's not playing very well either.
I'm sure that he can. David Poile, if he tells Peter Laviolette to put a guy in a lineup, he will. But
perhaps,
Turris definitely been and he's an anchor on that team. If they could get rid of his contract, it'd be huge. Would you trade Turris and eat $3 million of it for the next 4 years.
Depends what you get back, I guess. I mean, you have to look at it too. You've got, Roman Yossi's contract kicking in. And then you got to pay. Well, you got to find somebody else to play defense, and I think.
Yeah, I mean, you've still got Ekholm for a couple more years. I mean, at this point, Nashville, though, like any team, you're going to go through cycles. You're not going to be the tops of the league at all times right now. Like, it's nearly impossible the way that it's structured. And so you were supposed to win. Like, this is your window right now. You signed Duchesne because you basically went, well, in 5 years, is the Duchesne deal going to look great? No, but maybe we'll have won a cup. And all of a sudden, you're looking at the rest of your lineup and going, oh, maybe we maybe overshot some of these guys because the rest of the lineup is looking very thin.
Yeah, maybe.
Where, like, when Nashville went to the finals, their depth was phenomenal. It felt like they could score up and down that lineup. Like, yeah, they didn't have these super high-end forwards, but they had guys who could score everywhere.
Maybe, the interesting situation, maybe a team like Ottawa could welcome him back. They wouldn't mind the cap space to maybe get up to the floor next year. And maybe you go out and you say, hey, give us Tyler Ennis, who's on an expiring contract, or...
There's no way Kyle Turris is going back to Ottawa, I'll just tell you.
Okay, well, I don't know. I'm just trying to think of ways to get him out of Nashville. It's bad. He needs to go.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing you can always do is, I mean, you want to rehabilitate a guy. You want to help him get back to where you think that he could be, but it's just a matter of, he hasn't been awful.
No, he can still be a 40-point guy.
He's put up 12 points in 24 games. I mean, it's a 40-point guy. $6 million, 20 points. Yeah, it's not great, but like, it's also not, I don't know if it's worth, I mean, okay, smash a guy on the bench for a minute because you want to send a message, but you're paying the guy. Put him in the lineup. Have him play top 9 minutes. It's, I think that maybe is a mistake. And that also could be Peter Laviolette, their relationship. Obviously, there's something there because he's benching him, and we'll see how that. And we'll follow all that as the season progresses. But anything else you want to hit on before we get out of here?
Kovalchuk, does he resign anywhere?
Ilya Kovalchuk, yes, put on waivers to terminate his contract.
Yeah. Do you think he resigns anywhere this year?
I think he goes home.
Do you?
Honestly,
okay.
I think he's out of there.
I hear he wants to still play in the NHL, but. I think
going to sign Kovalchuk.
Well, you give him a minimum, right? Because
sure.
He got his $4.2 something million bonus at the beginning of the year, and he just got another $4 million bonus, last week. So he's not going to be hurting for money. Now you can sign him maybe to a 1-year, $750,000 contract. If you're a team like, I could say maybe even Arizona or Montreal, who could use a third line guy. But again, the only problem with Kovalchuk is he's not good defensively in his own end.
He's not good.
He can still produce a little bit of offense. He's not the fastest guy, but the problem is on his own end. And so when you have those third and fourth line guys, you want them to be responsible checkers and defensive guys. And so
yeah, he needs to go somewhere where I think that it's more than like a production thing.
Yeah, I
think it's he was on a bad team, so.
Sure.
It's hard to play your balls off when you're on a bad team and you're an older guy who's like, this is.
Yeah, I don't need this.
It's yeah,
exactly.
I understand. You know where I could see being a good fit? It's Pittsburgh. We've got Malkin there.
Yeah.
Another
Russian connection.
I don't know if they like each other. I've no that's not me saying they don't like each other, but maybe is there a chance that they've played together? I think they played together during the Olympics at some point.
Yeah.
And
what about the Rangers? Speaking of Russians, Panarin's anchoring.
Yeah.
I mean, he's putting that team on his back.
He is putting that team.
I mean,
holy smokes!
Now you give him another Russian to
he
play
became
with.
A free agent a year too soon because I think the Rangers they would have been happy to have another top 10 pick, and that's not going to happen anymore.
Right.
It looks like they're probably not going to make the playoffs, but they're going to darn well try to.
Right.
They're going to try to make those playoffs.
Yeah, I think they're going to be like Detroit was for those 3 years where they're making first round and they were barely squeaking in. And the Rangers are going to be that team that, again, not going to squeak in, but they're just going to try their darndest, and it's going to cost them in terms of
end up with a 14th overall pick.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they got to draft real good, but.
Yes, they do. All right. Well, that is our show. You can go to find us on Twitter at OT Hockey Talk, as well on Instagram. Let us know your thoughts on all the coaching firing on the Taylor Hall trade. Let us know who you think won that deal. If there's something we need to know about some of those prospects, you let us know. We'd love to get some insider scouting report on those. And until next time, we'll talk to you guys soon.